Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark on the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 2020 Argentinian drama, The Dog Who Wouldn't Be Quiet.
Gracias, porque la verdad que sin esto nos moríamos.
Hey, well, that seems a little dramatic to me, but I will do the best I can for you here. I thought The Dog Who Wouldn't Be Quiet was a pretty good movie, not great. It's a little over an hour long, like an hour 10, an hour and 15 minutes, but I thought it was just incredibly slow. And normally I love black and white movies, which is just shot in complete black and white, but I thought the slowness pace of this movie mixed with the black and white just made it really hard for me to keep my attention and for me to really get involved in it. Now, it would be easy in this movie to say that the dog who wouldn't be quiet is a dog in the beginning of the movie who the main character Sebastian takes to work every day, and he's asked not to bring this dog to work because he barks constantly all the time. And you see that and you think, okay, that's how the movie got its title, The Dog Who Wouldn't Be Quiet. But I think that there's something else going on here with the title, and it does not necessarily reference the dog. And I believe it references the main character Sebastian, who goes through life. He's fired from a few of his jobs. Now, he refuses to stop bringing his dog in, and he instead leaves his job, and then he goes on to work a few other odd jobs. One of the odd jobs he does is on a farm, and while he's on the farm, tragedy becomes of his dog, and they show the tragedy in a cartoon type tragic cartoon, which I thought I preferred a lot better than if it had not been done that way. But the dog who wouldn't be quiet for me is him, because he continues to push through his life no matter what tragedy befalls him, no matter what hardships or heartaches befall him. He still pushes through life. He still manages to survive, and in that way he refuses to die. He refuses to lay down. He refuses to let the struggles of life get to him. So in that way he is the dog who would not be quiet. So after this tragedy bestows him and he gets these odd jobs, he ends up meeting this girl at a wedding, and this is a very fast, they're dancing with each other, or she's dancing off to the side and he's dancing, and then they end up like looking at each other, and eyes are looking at each other. They continue to dance and kind of move towards each other, and then they're basically laying down together, and they're a couple. They have a child together, and then later on in the movie there is this pandemic that happens. Now, the pandemic is that it looks like it's another hand-drawn thing to show how the pandemic happened, and it seems like there's some sort of meteor that hits the world and releases some sort of gas into the atmosphere, and this gas infects the entire world to where you can only walk up to 4 feet. So you have to kind of hunch over and crawl, or hunch over and walk in a manner to where you're not exceeding 4 feet in height. There are people who have like these bubbles that they wear on their head. They're rich people who can afford these breathing mechanisms so that they can walk more higher than 4 feet. Sebastian does have one of these at one point, but then later on it gets stolen, and then his wife ends up buying all of them one of these bubbles so that they can stop living their life at 4 feet. Eventually they're told that this gas that's surrounding them should only be around for like 6 months, and it stretches on for a much longer time. And eventually it goes away, and he goes back to kind of living his life. And this movie is just about him and the hardships that he faces, and trying to overcome those hardships and to keep pushing through and to keep pushing on. And your life might not be what you expected it to be. Your life might not be what you kind of wanted it to be. maybe you're like in this malaise where you're just kind of trying to go through the steps, trying to go through the process every day, but you still just push through and you still make it happen. And that's what I got out of it. At least it's a very odd movie. The pandemic thing comes out of nowhere. It really, like, literally out of nowhere. The movie is just chiming along, and then they show this cartoon of a meteor hitting and pandemic. Bam. Now, if I hadn't lived through a pandemic, I would have thought, the bubble thing, maybe that's a little extreme, but going through the pandemic and knowing like the precautions that you have to take, it was very realistic. And then, I mean, at the time this movie was made, we were going through a pandemic, or at the time that this movie came out, we were going through a pandemic, so it was very topical at that time. I hear there's a lot of movies that came around the pandemic that are like this, where it's like a contagion that comes out. I haven't seen any more besides this one, but it's interesting watching this type of movie, knowing that it was going on at that time. The acting in this movie is pretty good. I would say he doesn't have any like big acting points in this movie, but what he does is very believable. He doesn't talk too much, I would say. There's not a whole lot of like dialogue, if I remember correctly, in this movie. But he does a good job. He is someone who is very believable with what he's doing. I don't know. I had a hard time really understanding his character. I had a hard time really like rooting for his character in any way, or really trying to back his character up in any way. I think I've just seen so many of these movies that are just supposed to be about like a real person's life in real time and what they're going through, and especially in the 2010s, 2020s, there's been so many of these movies that are just like, let's take this specific person's life in a specific time and just kind of try to make a realistic picture of what it would look like. And out of all of them, this one's probably the slowest. It's probably the most boring, if I'm going to be honest. It was okay. But for me, it didn't do anything special except the whole pandemic part, which was kind of neat watching that, kind of reliving that whole part of my life that I lived through a few years ago. It's always neat when you can kind of understand what they're going through, and I don't know if I would have would have wanted to watch it during the pandemic, because it would have been too soon. But watching it now, it's interesting to watch. But like I said, there's just something about his life and about the way they portrayed his life, and it just didn't seem like it was. To me, it didn't seem like it was all that interesting of a story. Like it was unique enough to be unique and interesting enough to really capture my attention, and for me to really like praise a lot of things about it. It was just okay. I know if anyone watches this review, sometimes it's hit or miss, but if anyone watches this review, they're probably going to flame me in the comments, which I'm used to by now, because that's essentially all that happens. So, but yeah, I was not a huge fan of it. It's still a 7 out of 10, because it's still better than a lot of the other, a handful of the movies I've seen that are 100% fresh. Oh, I might as well mention this now at the end of the review. This movie has a 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, and a 75% fresh rating from the audience. I am currently reviewing every movie that has a 100% fresh rating from the critics, and then once I've reviewed them all, I will rank them from worst to best. So this still gets a 7. It's still better than maybe a couple handfuls of movies that I've seen that are 100% fresh. But for me, it's very run of the mill. It doesn't do anything too new, too exciting. It doesn't take any chances. And yeah, it's just kind of, it's there. That's basically it. So it's a 7 out of 10. I hope you join me next time when I review a movie called Cousins. Thank you. Have a great day.